Welcome back, Future Warriors. We have a very fun and amazing episode that we're going to have for you today, all about the living opportunities at Waterloo.
It was so amazing seeing so many people at March Open House this year. If you didn't catch our video where we answered some of the top questions at March Open House, be sure to check that out.
And there are always some amazing opportunities that you can be a part of during open house events across universities, talking to current staff, professors, faculty, students, and even getting campus tours and residence tours as well.
But if you weren't able to make it to March Open House, don't worry, you can still do all those things. You can book a campus tour, a residence tour, and even a faculty tour.
And if you can't make it in person, no problems at all. There are always opportunities to attend and do things virtually, and we will have all of those linked in the description.
As we mentioned, seeing residences is one of the top things to do at March Open House, which is why we have a full episode for you today about all the living options at Waterloo.
And we have some amazing special guests, which we're very happy to introduce. We have a current staff member working at in-campus housing. We also have a current student as well as a Don to speak about their experiences at Waterloo.
And without further ado, let's get into the episode.
And we finally have our special guests here today. We're very excited to have all three of you join us. Do you all want to introduce yourself? Maybe we'll start with you, Christine.
Yeah, I'm Christine, and I work in marketing at campus housing.
My name is Caesar. I'm in undergrad Dawn at UW Place.
And I'm Christopher, health sciences student and a residence ambassador formerly, and formerly a student housing administrator.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. We're super excited to talk about the living opportunities that we have at Waterloo and to get some of that expertise. All the facts will really come from you, Christine, and then all the student experiences will come from our two students here. And Aman, you can also talk about your experiences as well. I know for myself, I lived at home, so off campus, so I don't have that kind of expertise. So even maybe I'll try to learn a little bit from all of you today. So I guess we'll start off with something quite general. So what are some pros and cons to living on campus, maybe versus some off-campus opportunities?
I guess I can start. Number one is proximity, right? So you're living on campus, and all of our residences are within the city block that is of Waterloo, and that includes the colleges too. So all the four colleges are right on campus. There's so much programming interwoven into living on campus in first year. So we're really pro supporting the transition and everyone's overall, ease into university life and moving away from home for the first time, I'd say.
I think a big pro for me, I guess, on living on campus, was definitely the employment opportunities, especially you're able to develop your skills, earn a little bit of money. So it was really important to me that I come out of university having my tuition paid. Since I want to pursue postgraduate studies, I feel like living on campus, there's so many opportunities to earn money, gain skills, right? You can be a Dawn me, you can be a Sarah, a residence ambassador, a front desk assistant. So there's a lot of employment opportunities when you live on campus. Yeah.
And I think for me, so I lived in Ronnet Village or Rev in my first year, and for me, the greatest part was the community aspect of it. I had so many awesome friends I met through there, and we're still all great friends to this day. And like Caesar said, the employment is also great. I can second that for sure. But overall, the community aspect was such a good transition and just a great thing to have for residents.
Yeah, having that opportunity to just make those friendships, make those connections is so valuable, which really helps you with that transition from high school to university. One of the common questions I will always get on the road, so maybe students or even Christine, you'll know the answer to this, but how fast, or I guess how far is it from, let's say, your living quarters to maybe some classes that you'll be in? Is it maybe a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk? Especially in the winter, that's really where students and parents are oh, what's that situation look like?
Yeah, nothing's far. I'd say nothing's further than 13 minutes. We had a co-op student actually time it last summer.
Really?
She walked from every residence to the SLC.
For me personally, I guess living in UW Place, the court I live on, Woolwich, it's a 2-minute walk from the Ion station. So honestly, 1 Ion station away, and a 5-minute walk to my classes. So especially in the winter, where people don't really want to make that 10 to 15-minute walk, the Ion is super useful, especially if you're living in UW Place.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Ion is the streetcar, because LRT.
Comes to campus every 10 minutes, so it's huge. Yeah.
And for me in classes, I lived in, once again, Rev. So I would either have classes in the health building or the STC building, and it was 10 minutes either direction. So it was really easy to also just cut through other residences and stay warm in the winter as well.
Nice.
Yeah, sure. Take advantage of the tunnels and
Oh, yeah.
little sections inside. Yeah. No, but I totally agree. I feel first year especially, I was able to make so many of my friends because I was on campus. And Christine, maybe you can speak a little bit to how many first years are on campus and, live together first year and get that experience.
Yeah, so Waterloo, we're one of the largest housing organizations for universities in Canada, and we have over 5,000 first-year students who are living with us within campus housing and with the 4 university colleges. So yeah, there are a lot of students, and I'd say in terms of each incoming year, over 80% of incoming first years will live on campus. So like you have 5,000 first year students moving, and they think they're all moving here alone, but really they're not, because there's so many other students moving in the fall.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was a different episode that we were talking about, like the first week in residence is everyone's door is open and you can just walk by anyone. So it might feel like you're alone, but there's so much community just on your floor that it's a lot more comfortable. But talking a little bit about on campus, what kind of residence options are available for first years?
Well, with campus housing, we have traditional style housing. So that's your standard dorm where it could be a single room or a double room, and you'd have a shared bathroom across the hall, and all your meals would be taken in our cafeterias. We have cafeterias in each of our traditional style buildings, and the same goes for the colleges. Campus housing is special because we also offer suite style residences, which are like apartments. That's where Caesar lived in first year and where he's a Don right now. So you'd have 2 to 3 other roommates with a shared bathroom, a shared kitchen, and a shared living area.
And then how are roommates assigned? So do you get the opportunity to select which roommates do you want? Is it chosen at random? Is there a questionnaire that happens? How does that all play out?
Christopher, do you want to take that? Because you had such a good experience with your roommate.
Oh yeah, for sure. So for me, I didn't really have anybody I wanted to live with from my high school. So I decided to, take that chance and get a random roommate. We did fill in those questionnaires to kind of ask about, for example, how do you study? When do you wake up? When do you go to bed? Those kind of, personality and behavioral type questions, trying to get someone matched. It's pretty similar. And I found that it was actually really, really good. My roommate and we clicked instantly, and we've been best friends ever since. And honestly, it's my ride or die on my day 1 year. So it was a great experience for me.
That's awesome. And if you do have, let's say, somebody who is also applying to Waterloo, is there a possibility that you could be guaranteed that you'll be roommates with that friend or with that person?
Yeah. So if 2 students who are coming, from their hometown, they want to live together, as long as they fill out the preference form correctly, they will be paired together. Yeah. It's never really not a case.
For sure.
That's nice. And so you can pick your roommate, or you can get paired with a roommate that could be your lifelong best friend. Now, what is the process for choosing what residence you'll live in?
Right. So if a student decides that they want to live with campus housing in one of our 5 first year residence buildings, they rank that in the first year guarantee, and then following they'll be sent the campus housing preference form, and that's where students tell us where they would like to live, what sort of meal plan they would like to have, behavioral questions that Christopher was talking about. So if when we do match you with a roommate or suite mates, there's some road to success for that. And I think there's even questions if you need an extra long bed. So it's very detailed. It's long, but we ask these questions so that we can give students the best possible experience they have, and it's quite successful.
For food, I know we just mentioned this a little bit briefly, but what does the food look like on campus, and what are some different options that we could have there as well?
Yeah, so I can take that.
Yeah.
But honestly, every residence has its own eatery, so it really depends on which residence you're living in. But of course, if you're a resident of campus housing, your meal plan applies to any residence, and any eatery in any residence. But honestly, they're very accommodating. I have friends that are vegetarian, some friends that have to be gluten-free, right? And there's always options, there's always exceptions, and if something doesn't exist, there's always accommodations that can be made, right? But honestly, in my first year, I ate everything, even just in the eateries, right? Pizza, curry, there's a create your own pasta section. There's honestly a lot of variety. I feel I never really got bored because there were a lot of options. Even if you don't really want to eat in an eatery, we have a lot of chains that accept the meal plan in SLC. So I know There's the Chashka place that opened. I really like to eat there. I like just trying out the different menu items. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a big bonus, is that your meal plan doesn't have to be used at your residence. It can be used like on campus as well.
Yeah, so if you live with campus housing, you can use it at any of our eateries, and then I think there's 23 restaurants on campus that you could just tap your walk card on. Food on campus and meal plans can be like daunting for students like coming because they're like not eating their cultural food, or they're not going to know if they're going to like it because they're really picky. But I would say that Waterloo's in-campus housing meal plans and eateries are like very impressive. Like I'm always surprised at what there's to offer. There's multiple hot dishes at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then there's always like some sort of food bar. But in terms of dietary restrictions, like we're very accommodating, and we can accommodate like almost all diets. So it's not to worry. We also have an on-site dietitian who works with all of our students if necessary, and yeah, she's available year-round. So.
Oh, that's amazing! It's like a personal dietitian. Could definitely use that when I was going to the gym.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she even walks students through our like the kitchens in our cafeterias just to show them like, okay, you have an allergy to this. This is how our chef is going to deal with that. Right. Also, all of our chefs are Red Seal certified, and yeah, they take a lot of pride in what they do every day. So
for sure, that's awesome.
Students are well taken care of.
I think even past that, I think the staff like really make the eateries like feel like home, right? They have like the seasonal events all the time. I know in Rev they have the competitions, right? I think the staff, even just beyond providing like food service, they really do want to make the students feel like this is a second home for them.
Right.
So I really like the events they do all throughout the year. My favorite, I think, is the elf themed menu where you do create your own pasta and they provide candy to top your pasta with.
Oh, so, I haven't heard of that.
Oh, really?
That's really cool.
That's so awesome. I haven't heard of that either. That's awesome. And just for the meal plan, is it more like buffet style, or is it more like a money reward, like point system kind of thing?
It's a buffet, so everything is weighed, and it's a declining balance on our meal plan.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about first year and how campus is really good for first year students, but can you live on residence in upper years?
Yeah. So applications are open at certain periods for any upper year students that want to apply to housing. I think a very big misconception that a lot of first years, like when they look at upper year housing as like an option on campus, is that it's very hard to get an offer. And I think that's sort of like a misconception. Honestly, like just apply, see if you get an offer, and it's not honestly something impossible, right? And like the residences we do offer, like we offer the same services that we have in first year. So upper year residents, you still have your dawn, you still have those community events. You can still purchase a meal plan. So, it's very similar to what the first year experience entails. And I know a lot of people really like the social aspect. And if you want to continue that sort of like first year feeling, I think upper year housing is a great option for that.
So now we talked a lot about the meal plan, food, talked about what it's like living on campus, but how do students actually live on campus? What is the application process to getting on residence?
Yeah, so I think that Waterloo is great because we have a first year residence guarantee. I know that for me, that was a big plus when I was looking for housing here. So I found that it was just a really easy process. You submit your application. Well, this year it's before June 10th, and then you have your deposit in as well. Then throughout the summertime, you'll get your residence preference form. You can rank out your residences, and then you'll get assigned housing and meet your roommates.
And what is that, like, just to be a little bit more specific about what that timeline is about applying to residence, like from when you get your offer to when you have to submit the first form and then like so on?
So student receives an offer to Waterloo, they accept their offer, and as long as they accept their offer, they're eligible to apply for the first year residence guarantee. Really, the only thing is that you have to apply by the deadline of June 10th, it is this year, and pay a $500 deposit. So there's no priority given to students who apply earlier than like say June 10th. So yeah, as long as you get it in, you will have a bed for the next fall.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Now what we'll do is talk a lot about on-campus housing options. Now let's talk a little bit about off-campus housing options, just to get that full inclusive look at what are the living opportunities in Waterloo. So What are some more common, let's say, living arrangements for students off campus? Are they pretty close to campus? Are they a little bit further away? How does it compare maybe to living on campus versus off campus?
So I feel like a lot of people will try to go for like an apartment style type of housing with some friends or random roommates off campus. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the student housing here is really accessible and really close by and on at least one bus route. For me, I was lucky enough to get an apartment where I could literally just walk 2 minutes and I'm on campus. But other friends I have take one bus, 10 minutes and they're here. So honestly, it's super convenient wherever you go in Waterloo.
Yeah, it all kind of depends on what you want and how close you want to be and what kind of style room you want, whether you want multiple roommates who you know, or maybe you don't want to know them, you want to live with perfect strangers, how many bathrooms you want. It all kind of depends on your price range, how far you're willing to live, and what kind of arrangement you want.
Yeah. And Iman, I know you talked about earlier in a previous episode about the fact that you just like talked to somebody in class and then they wanted to be your roommate right away.
Yeah.
What was that experience for you, Christopher, for anybody who's been off campus? Like, did you kind of just start roommating or getting a roommate from like, let's say, a friend in class, or was it from an extracurricular activity or just something totally different, stranger, let's just room together?
Yeah, so for me, my roommate right now is one of my friends that I have in first year. So it was really just kind of like hey, you want housing? I want housing. It's a no-brainer. Let's look together. And it's a pretty easy process for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely also say to start looking early. So find your people and start looking. If you're in first year and you're looking for off-campus housing in second year, it's definitely a good idea to start looking like even November, December, January, because spots definitely fill up quick. There's definitely a lot of housing everywhere, but if you want kind of your top choices, there's also a lot of students, so make sure to do that early.
And I feel like for a lot of students, it's kind of like also what do they want to look for in housing? So shameless plug, Campus Housing have their home series go out on their Instagram page that kind of goes through some things to look for while you're looking for housing and some tips and tricks as well. So I'm also in that, so shameless plug.
Christopher, I wanted to ask, when you were signing your lease for off-campus housing, is there anything that you looked out for that you were a little bit cautious of?
For me, I kind of read through everything to make sure that there wasn't some little like fine print or clause that I was like, I don't know about that one. So all I wanted was just, something to be transparent and very fair and just everything outlined very, very clearly to say that, here's the terms and conditions, very explicitly what they wanted and what I would get from that.
Yeah. I would definitely also recommend, like for me as a first year signing a lease, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I would definitely recommend asking like a parent or guardian, someone who has been through it before, kind of knows what they're talking about a little bit more, to review that lease and maybe go over the clause a little bit. It's also a good thing to note that if you are renting off campus, you're probably also going to have to get renter's insurance like separately. So that's a good thing to note before you start looking.
Yeah. I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, but let's say, how far would you say like off campus housing is from, like, let's say just being on campus? I know it varies quite a bit, 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. But like you said earlier, there's always that express bus that comes on University Ave. It's there like every 5, 10 minutes. So it's super fast and easy to get to campus as well. And in the summer when the weather's not good and not snowing all the time, then we also had those e-bikes and those e-scooters as well that students love to use to commute.
Yeah, I've tried the e-scooters once before.
How was it?
This was my friends and I. We went to like McDonald's like 10 p.m. one night. So we
that's the vibe.
scooted back at like midnight. We're like, I was like, this is so scary. But I was like, this is actually really nice. Nice cool breeze in my face.
Yes,
I was like, would I do it again though? Maybe not, but definitely fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have not tested them out yet. They're a little scary.
I haven't either.
Yeah. No, I also live very close like Christopher. So I live about like 5 minutes from campus. But I do have friends that like live farther and just take that Ion here, which is again that streetcar that we've got. Yeah. I think it all depends on what you're comfortable with. Me and my friends personally, we were a little bit nervous to be farther away because we walk home pretty late at night, and we didn't want to have to rely on the busing system, so we lived closer. But if that's something that's not really important to you, then you can always live farther.
Yeah. And I think I recently heard that all of the off-campus housing options in Waterloo, because we have 3 post-secondary institutions, ourselves, Laurier University, as well as Conestoga College, we have one of the most, if not the most, off-campus housing opportunities for students. in all of Canada. So that's another huge benefit that Waterloo has to offer. So if you're worried about finding those opportunities living on or off campus, we have a lot of possibilities there. So nothing to really worry about. And then just another question, probably directed towards the student experience, but any memorable experiences from living on and off campus?
Yeah. So I lived in Beck Hall first year. I really appreciated the lounges that we had every so floors. And it was really nice to have everybody sort of come over, since I feel like the lounges provide like a good dark space to watch movies. So it was always like a nice break, maybe like on a Friday, or maybe just like starting the week from like a weekend, having like the whole friend group come together and just watch horror movies in the dark in like one of the lounges. So
Yeah, so for me, horror movies, absolutely not. Can't do those. But for me, mine was more so because I was on a living learning community, so I had a bunch of students on my floor in the same program. I remembered for our chemistry labs, we would, go to each other's rooms, knock on the door, be like, hey, how do we do this? I don't know how to do this. So we go on the floor with our books and everything and try and talk it out and see how we can actually do the calculations and everything. And I guess with my roommate as well, like one thing that really like solidified like our, I guess, like ride or die day one thing was like, just one random night we always say goodnight to each other, and then it was like 1 a.m. went to bed, and then I don't know, I was just so tired and I was meaning to say, oh, good night, but instead I just said love you, and that was literally it. And then he was like, I love you too, Chris, and I was like, okay, well, that worked out. I didn't mean to say that, but it was really good. So that was that for us.
Awesome.
That's sweet. Yeah. No, I definitely loved like the the communal spaces. Like I lived in Village One, so we had the pool tables, and we got really good at pool first year. And unfortunately, we don't get to practice our skills as much off campus. But just kind of like late nights hanging out in those areas, and you're safe, and you can sit with your friends till like whatever hour at night and play board games. And like we had 24-hour like people at the front desk, so we could get a board game or play pool like really whenever we wanted. So it's very convenient, and it's nice to kind of build those bonds late at night.
That's awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being part of this first part. Christine, we know you have to get to get to a meeting and some additional things. So thank you so much for spending this time to speak with us.
Thanks for having me.
And our audience loves all the support that you also provide to us as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, we now have a very special segment. We actually did an AMA on our Instagram. You of Waterloo Future. So we might do another AMA in the future if you follow that and check for when we do one in the future. But these questions are basically questions that students have asked about housing and about your experiences off campus and on campus. So we're going to answer some special questions because they came from special viewers. But the first one is, how did you find your off-campus housing, which is specifically for Christopher?
Yeah, so for me, my building that I live at right now had an open house that I went to, and then on there, I kind of like secured a spot like right there in that day. So I was like, oh, well, pretty easy for me. So that was just an easy process that I got to go through for that.
Okay, nice. Mine was a little bit more tricky. I definitely had to email a couple different places, and then we did a couple different tours. And then the place that we actually found we had 24 hours to submit a deposit and like sign the lease. So it was definitely fast tracked, but I guess it all depends on kind of the place that you're at.
What is it like living with somebody that you don't know before? So how did you kind of adjust to having a roommate?
yeah, so I did come to university with a couple high school friends.
Yeah.
But I sort of chose to live with like new people, only because I wanted to have new friends, people to just, I guess, like as Christopher said, like ride or dies for university, right? And so yeah, I didn't request any roommates, and I got 2 other roommates from economics, which is not in my program, and I found the experience to be like really rewarding. I feel like getting to know a new person, you get to know like a whole new community, right? So like he also came with some other friends from high school, so I was able to befriend them as well. So I feel like it's a very easy way to get yourself like a new community, right?
Yeah.
Sort of push yourself past like your usual friendships, your usual bounds, so that you're able to experience new things in university, experience new people.
Right. And then like that networking piece too, because like you're friends with them, and then you're now friends with their friends, and then it just expands from there. Yeah, absolutely.
And like for me, when I moved in, I'm an only child as well, so I wasn't really used to having someone live close quarters to me. But honestly, I found that we set some boundaries, had a roommate agreement set by our dawn, and it was just smooth sailing from there. So we established our boundaries, knew what we did and didn't like, and worked well together. So it was really good.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I think it's important to note that like if you're living with people in such close proximity, like there's bound to be like some issues. So it's important to set those boundaries and it's important to kind of lay that framework out. And then it's like again, it's like living with siblings. So like you might have tiffs here and there, but like that's all part of the experience of living with someone, whether they're like your best friend or a complete stranger.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of for both of you. What was your experience like living on campus? And then maybe for Christopher, what was your experience like living on campus versus off campus?
Yeah, so I found living on campus to be like so incredibly convenient. Um I just feel like all the services that campus housing provides, I describe it best like a village, right? You like there's really like sometimes you feel no need to leave campus, right? You have your eatery, right? You have like the gyms and residence. Um there's even a counselor on residence, right? If you're concerned with like any mental health issues, right? So I really felt like everything was there, like in such close proximity. Um, for me, like I lived in a suite style, right? So I had my like own kitchen as well. So even people that like don't want to eat like in eateries, right? That for me was an option, like cooking. So that was also like, oh, like I don't have to leave campus, right? So I would bring just like groceries from home, and then I'd like cook with my roommates. I thought like living on campus super convenient. Everything's in close proximity, especially when you're adapting to university. There's new academic challenges, new priorities that you have to face, right? So having everything just like right at your fingertips really gives you the time to study.
And make it as like accessible and as convenient for
Yeah.
you as possible, especially if you're moving to like a whole new city, or if you're an out of province student coming here as well. It can be a really big shift and change. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I kind of echo what Caesar said. I really did enjoy kind of having the community aspect and just the convenience of everything being so close by. I will always kind of miss those special events that my Dawn hosted for all of us and our peer leader as well. But I think for off campus, I do miss having the convenience of not having to think about food, because now I gotta be like, oh, I gotta do groceries today. I'm like, okay, I have nothing in the fridge. What do I do now? So that was some things. And then also, as well as that, the campus housing staff do a great job of kind of maintaining and cleaning up the common spaces. Whereas off campus, I'd be like, okay, I got a Swiffer and sweep now. But I'm just like, what am I doing right now? So there is that aspect of like, sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to do chores right now. But other time I'm just like, you know what? I'm stressed out. Let me just start Swiffering and vacuuming because I'm bored. Kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to both, but I definitely miss the cafeteria as well. Not having to cook every single day would save a lot of time.
Yeah. And then sometimes I still get my meals cooked for me at home, which is a benefit. So, but yeah, moving on to, let's say, co-op. How does living on campus or even just off campus, how does that look when you are a co-op student on a co-op term? And for off-campus housing, how does subletting work?
I guess for being on co-op, I think that campus housing is really good with kind of offering those flexible contracts. So if you're in first year, you have 4 stream versus 8 stream. Your 4 stream contract will kind of fit your academic terms, and 8 stream, same thing as well. And then for students who want to also live on campus for a work term, they have very flexible options that you can choose as well. For me, I haven't subletted yet. I decided to hold my lease, and I luckily have both academic terms and my work term right here in Waterloo, so I got to kind of stay the whole time here. But I do find that subletting is very common as well, especially on like social media sites where everyone's trying to like, hey, I'm subletting this space for this much of these amenities at this location. Let me know. So I think that everyone's trying to reach out to everyone about trying to find some housing, which is really convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely an option. It's just subletting when you're on work on study terms. And then alternatively, you could sign a full lease and then sublet your room out when you're on a work term.
Yeah. And then Caesar, same thing for, let's say, on-campus housing experiences for the co-op, or do you see it like how do students navigate that?
Yeah, so as upper year housing, if you're on co-op, you do have the option to apply for upper year housing. With co-op, there's like a lot of opportunities, right? And some of your opportunities might be right here in Kitchener, right here in Waterloo, right? And sometimes like it might be commuting, right, to be like on campus, and especially with like all the services like available to you. Maybe after a long day of work, you just want to tap your card at the eatery, right? Or especially like with co-op and all like the costs associated. Being like an upper year student, sometimes it might be easier to have access to pack, right? Living like on campus, or have access to the um, residence gym. So in co-op, like I feel like it's a great option to give you that flexibility and that time away from work.
For sure. So we've talked a little bit about the different residences and kind of the residence preference form that you submit, where you kind of rank which residence you would like to live in. Did you guys end up getting your first pick on your residence form?
Yeah, so I actually got my fifth choice,
Okay.
right? So I lived in Beck Hall in UW Place in a suite in a double room. So I had another person in the same room, but in a suite of three people, right? So what a suite style basically is that at least in UW Place in Beck Hall, it's three people sharing like a common space, a kitchen, and a washroom. And then it's specifically for UW Place that consists of like one double room and then one single room. Like even though it wasn't like my top choice, I feel like whatever you get, each residence I feel like has like a lot of variety in terms of the eatery, the community, right? And I feel like it's a new way to like get new experiences, right? Learn independence, learn to live in like different environments, right? For me especially, I was like very grateful that I was able to live in suite style, because one of my goals like coming into university was to save money, especially on housing, and my option especially was luckily the cheapest, right? Because I didn't have a meal plan since suite has kitchen, so I found it like really convenient and cost saving to live in that suite and be able to cook my meals like in the kitchen, instead of having to like purchase a meal plan. So that's definitely an option for people who have the flexibility, if they want to save money.
And for me, since I was in a living learning community, I didn't have all the choices available. So I had two options, Ronit Village and Mackenzie King Village. I did rank Ronit Village first, and I did get it, because for me, I was like, I don't really feel like cooking that much. So how much time could I save just going down the cafeteria versus actually cooking a full-on meal? That was a big thing for me. But I think that my first choice turned out to be amazing, and I have no regrets whatsoever.
And just speaking of meal plans, what type of meal plan should students get? Or I guess what are the different types of meal plans? And maybe which ones would you suggest to students based off their preferences?
Yeah, so when you're applying to housing, of course, you'll have the option of three different meal plans. So the light, average, and hearty, and those really depend on like what your dietary needs are. So light being sort of the cheapest, and giving you less money to like buy food from, and then of course hearty being the one with the most money. So obviously depending on like your dietary needs, your goals, anything of that sense, right? You just choose and select like whichever one is more appropriate for you, like taking into account. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like for my roommate and I, we both happened to choose the hearty one. Him because he was a big gym bro, so he was like, he wanted all the protein smoothies, and I was like, you know what, I need my sweet treats to get through the day. So we had very different, I guess, aspects of that, but overall in the end, it was really great, and we didn't end up spending all of our money, but no problem because the balance did carry over to the next term, so it was really easy to have that kind of carry over.
That is really good. So just knowing that you have that security that if you don't go through everything, you can just carry that over into the next one. Absolutely.
Yeah, which is almost more convenient because then you have like coffee, like even in third year and fourth year on for free. I mean, technically not free, but in my head it is free.
Yeah,
It's girl math.
It's girl math, yeah. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about on campus versus off campus. Do you, Christopher, sorry, because I know you haven't lived off campus, but would you say that living on campus or off campus is more expensive?
Honestly, I feel like it's just there's not one concrete answer, just kind of depends on where you live, some amenities, some necessities, nice to haves, and everything like that. So I think that campus housing is really good because it's kind of all inclusive and everything. You have one set fee for everything, including I guess your room, any Wi-Fi and electricity as well. Whereas some off-campus locations will kind of have the price of the room, but it won't include utility and everything like that. So I think it just depends. But for me, I found that campus housing had a very, I guess, clearly laid out and explicit and very, I guess, comprehensive fee that made sense.
Yeah. And then that kind of brings us to our last point for our special segment. What is one piece of advice that you'd want to share with people before choosing a residence? So this could be for both of you.
Honestly, do your research, but sort of go in with like an open mind, right? I feel like there are so many misconceptions that exist just throughout like any university, any residence, right? And I think like above all else, you sort of have to remember, right, that like you're coming into university, right? It's gonna be your first year, and like regardless of like wherever you live or um what costs like you're spending, right, like you're going to get that like very social experience, right, especially from Waterloo, right? You have like the people on your floor, the dawns, the community events, right? You have like the eateries, right, where you're gonna make like so many amazing memories. You're gonna have so many chances to like look back um in like upper year. And I feel like, you know, when you're choosing um like your residence, like just remember, like above all else, like you're gonna have a fun time regardless.
I think for me, like I guess kind of stole what I said, but in a way, I think I guess my motto is like, residence is what you make of it. If you kind of sit in your room all day and pout about it, that's gonna be your experience. If you actually go out, decorate your room, make those friends, have those group dinners, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And those dawn events as well, like they're there for you, so might as well go to them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's super huge for students to just know that there's so many opportunities for you on campus and the supports that you'll receive. So that's awesome. And you lived on campus first year, correct?
I did, yes. I lived in Village One.
What is one piece of advice that you'd have for our guests or for our viewers?
For our viewers, I feel like I would say be sure to soak it all in. I feel like living on residence is such a unique experience, and I do miss it so much, like now not living on campus anymore. So whether you like spend 1 year there or 4 years there, like soak it all in, because you're never gonna get that sense of community and just like being around all these people your age and like being able to like go down to like the caf in your pajamas and like just kind of it's such a fun experience, and it's something that you're never really gonna get again. So I'd say soak it all in, and like sure, maybe there's like bad days, but like try and be as positive about it as possible, because you are gonna look back and miss it.
Yeah. And I think for me, even though I didn't live on campus at all, or even just in first year, one piece of advice that I definitely would have is for students to come to open houses, get residence tours, get campus tours, see if you can envision yourself being there, look at the rooms, see what things are like, whether you want a suite style, or whether you want a traditional room, or if you can't make in-person tours or open house events, there are a bunch of virtual residence or campus tours that we have uploaded on YouTube and other social media platforms, which we will be sure to link in the description. So make sure to check those out as well to get a good, comprehensive and full look before you choose which university you want to go into and which residence you want to sign up for. But thank you so much to all of our special guests. We love having you on the podcast and being able to share your personal experiences. And we just appreciate the time that you have for our future warriors and for our students coming in. So thank you so much. And then we'll give them a quick little wave at the middle there. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, Future Warriors, for being part of another amazing and special episode on all things living opportunities at Waterloo.
We hope you learned a lot about living on campus and off campus here at Waterloo.
And just so you remember, there is a 100% guarantee for all incoming first-year students to live on campus at Waterloo. Just make sure that you submit the application form by June 10th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time with the $500 non-refundable deposit.
For more information, please visit the link in our bio. And remember to follow us on Instagram, U of Waterloo Future. And be sure to like us, follow us, and comment on our platforms, because we want to hear from you.
And we'll see you in the next episode, Future Warriors.
Bye.
Bye.